So good afternoon everybody, and welcome to our session this afternoon on looking at probate. We want to make sure you don't get fined, but we want to make sure you don't miss any of the opportunities that are available to accountants now. In our session this afternoon, we're going to look at what you can and cannot do with and without a licence, and then look at the mechanics for actually becoming accredited to do probate work, and a very quick look at how we might promote that work going forward so you actually reap the benefits of all the effort you've put into becoming accredited.
We see a lot of firms come on our courses, get accredited, and then basically wait for clients to die. You know, we don't tell people. And it's the public at wide, you know, the world at large that also needs to know that we as accountants can do this. If you were to talk to your friends or your clients and say who can do probate, what will be their first answer at the moment? It's going to be solicitors, isn't it? Solicitors and banks. And we need to make sure that we're up there as well in the list of people that are able to offer this service. When the Institute first opened accreditation, you did have to be, or have within your practice, an ICAEW member. That is no longer the case. Provided you are a member of a professional body with a practicing certificate, you can apply to become accredited for probate work, and we'll look at the accreditation process a little bit later on. So the big question is, what is probate? What's all this fuss about? And the whole fuss is about obtaining this one piece of paper. So this piece of paper which gives you the entitlement to take out a grant of probate. And completing any papers to obtain a grant is a reserved legal activity. Now, I don't know if any of you in a private capacity have ever filled in the probate form, the PA1. You look at that form and you wonder what on earth is all the fuss about, because it's just basic information about the deceased and the executors if they've got them. You know, really there's nothing particularly contentious in that form. It just is a reserved legal activity. So as I said, the Institute have now issued this regulatory notice. Now, I've got a copy of it here. If you're interested in having a look at it, we do have a lot of extra copies on our stand. If you want a copy of this, go to stand 870, the SWAT stand, and you can get a copy of this to take away and have a read of. But basically, as I said, it takes you through various different scenarios in terms of the work that you might do and whether you can do it with or without a license. So for example, the first question, can I handle the whole process? i.e., deal with the IHT, deal with notifying all the asset holders that the person's died, complete the probate forms, submit them to the probate registry, get the grant, and then deal with the estate once we've got the grant. And without a license, you can't do the whole lot. You cannot complete the papers to take out that grant. Clearly, if you become accredited, yes, you can. And even if you're an executor and you're within a practice that does not hold a license, you still cannot take out the grant, even in a personal capacity. You need to sort of push that out to somebody who is authorised to do probate work. So, you know, the question, can I complete the PA1 form, which is the probate personal application form, without a licence? Well, you can help fill it in, but the executors will need to submit the form. We can't submit it on their behalf. So this is quite a useful document because, as I say, it does set out the parameters of whether you need a licence or not. And clearly, you don't want to be found doing things that you're not entitled to do so. We do compliance reviews, and we've gone out and we've found firms doing things. You know, we've found firms that have done the whole thing for years. No license. It's a criminal offence. You know, if things went really wrong, you could find yourself in a very serious position and probably not covered by your PI insurance. So, as I say, it does cover a range of questions, and similarly things like, can I negotiate with HMRC on the tax position on the estate? Well, without a license you probably can, but it's got to be under the control of the personal representatives. Clearly, if you are accredited, you can do the whole lot. As an executor, you can do it, but with your executor hat on rather than your advisor hat on. So I would recommend that if you're not sure where you're at, come and get a copy of this regulatory advisory from our stand, have a read through it, and make sure that you're not overstepping the mark, because you could find yourselves in problems. Now, some commentators have suggested that one way round this would be to do the whole lot, but just not charge a fee for taking out the grant. And that just won't work. Because how can you differentiate between the fee that you're doing for everything else and saying you're not charging for actually taking out the grant? So I would say that you can't, don't take that approach. It's too risky an approach. Either, farm out the actual probate process to another authorised person, be it an accountant, it could be a lawyer, it could be a banker, whatever. But certainly banks and lawyers charge a huge amount for this work. We did last year. We did a survey, and for those firms that had been accredited already, and asked what basis of fees they were charging. Because if you ask a lawyer, if you ask a bank, they normally charge a percentage of the estate. And we've known accountants who have had a lawyer quote for an estate that they've dealt with, and the lawyer has quoted £80,000 to deal with the estate. The accountant did it for 25 and still made loads of money, and everybody was happy. And I think most accountants that we've surveyed are using standard fees, maybe a premium charge out rate, but it's a standard based on time fee charging base rather than actually a percentage of the estate. All the ICAEW probate regulations say is that the fee that you charge must be fair and reasonable and quite clearly agreed with the personal representatives. Okay. And again, part of our survey was, why should accountants do this type of work? And basically the biggest response by far, well, one of them was it's more interesting than doing VAT returns, but the more sort of general thrust of views was it's giving a holistic service, it's giving the whole service. It's a bit of a cliche, but cradle to grave type service. Because you will hold, if you've been working for that client for years, you've got all of the information about their affairs already. Whereas the lawyers will have to ask lots of questions, they'll have to collate the information. Has anybody seen an IHT account prepared by a lawyer? They're not that brilliant, are they? Even the estate accounts can leave a lot to be desired. So, one reason for doing this is that we have a much more of a relationship with our clients. And so, when things do happen and somebody does die, they know you already, they trust you already, they're not having to go to somebody completely cold. If I were in practice, I'm not in practice now, if I were in practice, I think I would do this. I do think I personally would want to do this area of work. Remember that as accountants, we are only allowed to be involved in non-contentious probate work. So if there's any issues about the validity of the will, whether the person has had mental capacity at the time the will was made, if we're not happy with who the personal representatives are, that's all contentious probate work. Now don't worry, one of the things you need to identify when you take on a case is whether it's likely to become contentious. If it does have contention within it, it goes to a lawyer who specialises in contentious probate work. There aren't that many of them, and they don't tend to do the non-contentious stuff. So once the contention's removed, it comes back to you, and you carry on as before with taking out the grant. Now, as we know, ICAEW are the only accountancy body at the moment who are authorised to accredit accountants. And part of the process is that you have to demonstrate various things. And again, these have been set by the Legal Services Board. But if we look at the list of things on that screen there, most of them will already be covered by your ethical guidance and your ethical procedures. So most of you will have a robust complaints procedure, hopefully not used that often, but you will have a complaints procedure in place. The only different thing with when we're doing this work, because it is legal services, is that the clients will have the right to refer a complaint to the legal ombudsman. So that's an additional complaint sort of step in the process. You have to be competent. Now we'll talk about how we can demonstrate the initial competence in a moment, but obviously there will be an ongoing requirement for CPD in the area of probate. If you are a sole practitioner and you are the only authorised individual within the firm, you must have an alternate for probate work. And that can be another accountant, it could be a lawyer, it could be a banker, but you need to have an alternate in place. You have to have an appropriate level of PI insurance. The minimum claim level is 500,000 per claim. Now when it comes to PI insurance, we weren't sure how the insurer was going to react to us actually offering this service. There are certain insurance providers, Hiscox for one, who will not cover probate work. But the vast majority will do, and our clients are finding that actually there's very little increase in fees when we add this additional service to the range of services we already provide. Now the whole reason that we as accountants were able to offer this service was the Legal Services Act required a broadening of access to justice. So if you do apply to become accredited, you need to include a statement explaining why your accreditation will improve access to justice for the public. And, you know, it will be accessibility, location. You can come up with some wording. Perhaps one of the more interesting hoops that we have to jump through is that we are required to monitor the diversity of our workforce providing legal services and publish that information on our websites and provide that information to ICAEW. Now some firms were getting quite nervous and saying, well, I haven't got a particularly diverse workforce, it doesn't matter. You've just got to monitor the diversity. And ICAEW have produced a questionnaire that can be completed by staff. Nobody is compelled to complete the questionnaire. Has anybody seen that questionnaire? Has anybody looked at it? It's quite interesting, isn't it? Ethnic origins, sexual preferences, economic background. You know, a lot of people answer not answering this one, forget it. But it's a hoop we have to jump through, and ICAEW have to collate information about all those that they monitor and forward that onto the Legal Services Board. Now, if your firm is considering becoming licensed or accredited to do this work, there are two routes through which they can do this. Firstly, they can be an authorised firm, and an authorised firm is one where all of the individual principals are authorised individuals to do probate work. Clearly, if you're a sole practitioner, you're going to be an authorised firm. The rest of us, probably not all of the part, normally it's who runs quickest, manages to avoid doing the probate exams, because there has to be a partner, a principal within the firm who is authorised to do this work. But most firms are becoming licensed, where we require at least one principal within the firm to be an authorised individual. If you're going down the licensed route, then there are some additional hoops that you have to jump through. So as I've said, one of the principals must be authorised. If there are other principals that hold a material interest in the practice, they will need to be approved by ICAEW, and a material interest is 10%. Okay, so there was a form that gets filled in, and ICAEW, it's a rubber stamping exercise, hopefully, but will approve the other practices. You have to demonstrate that you're fit and proper. There are DBS checks carried out at the beginning, and clearly you all do fit and proper forms on an annual basis in any case. Now, I don't know if any of you have solicitor clients. A few years ago, when the Legal Services Act came in, they all had to appoint a head of legal practice and a head of finance and administration. The same applies for firms that are going to be doing probate work. So if you're a licensed firm, you will need a head of legal practice, and there'll be the ICAEW contact principal, and you will need a head of finance and administration who ensure that the ICAEW client money rules are applied to probate monies. Now, one interesting thing on client monies, obviously when you're dealing with estates and if you're doing the whole work, you're likely to be dealing with quite large sums of money. If you're not ICAEW members, the ICAEW client money rules say that if you're going to be holding £10,000 or more for a client for more than 30 days, it must be placed in a separate designated bank account. So the expectation is that you will set up a client account for each estate that you deal with. Okay. Now, legal services client money cannot be mixed in with accountancy client money either. So even if you'd only got small amounts of money, you'd need a legal services client account, because we've got to keep them separate. It's got to be ring-fenced for legal services. If we've got other principals who aren't ICAEW members, they will need to become ICAEW affiliates. So watch out for that one. And anybody who isn't authorised to do this work need to confirm that they understand they can't, sign off on any work there. But those are the additional hoops that a licensed firm has to jump through. Authorised firms don't need to have all of this in place. Clearly the PI insurance levels are appropriate, but all of the partners, all of the principals will be authorised to do this work, so a lot of the other things will not be required. How do we become accredited to do this work? Well, the ICAEW has identified 3 routes. Firstly, if you're an ICAEW member, then you're basically required to sit a top-up course, which we provide, and it's a 2-day course, at the end of which you sit an assessment. And provided you pass that assessment, you can demonstrate that you are competent to do this probate work. Clearly you'll build on it with CPD as the years go on. And in fact, if you are going to go down the non-members route, then who are otherwise qualified with another professional body, you do exactly the same process. And at the moment, SWAT UK are the only accountancy body providers or providers of probate training for accountants. So it's a 2-day course. I think we've got one gentleman here who has done the course and passed the assessment. I won't ask what his score was on the assessment. Best not. Okay. The pass mark is only 50%, I say. If I had my way, I'd have it higher. If I had my way, I'd put it up to 60%, but the Institute have said you pass at 50%. Most people who come on the course, I think, enjoy it. It's quite, it's quite a good fun 2 days. And most people who attend the course do pass the exam. Okay. We do have one gentleman, I don't think he's here, he's done it 8 times. He's done the exam 8 times. Because there's no, there's no block on how many times you can do it. Provided you can demonstrate the competence, you can just keep going until you do pass the assessment. Most people, of all the questions we get most questions about this exam. And it's a 2-hour exam, 100 marks, 20% of those marks are multi-choice, the rest are short answer questions. And it's split 40% tax, so IHT, and then income tax in relation to estate administration, and then the balance is on the legal services on the other side of things. So that's the assessment. Route 41B is if you are actually, some firms have lawyers within them, and if you are regulated already as a lawyer and accredited to do probate work, that's another way of entry. Is anybody here a member of STEP? Yeah, and if you sat certain of the STEP diplomas, again, you wouldn't need to do our assessment. You would need to just apply, and that, just check which diploma you've done and whether that does qualify for probate work. So those of you that maybe already have applied for probate, you will find that there is a huge mountain of paperwork that you have to go through when you apply. Because there are forms, you have to put your access to justice statement in, you've got an application form for the firm, you'll have an application form for each authorised individual, you may have to apply for affiliate status, and if you've got non-authorised owners, you may have to apply to get those nominated, as well as appointing the authorised individuals and the head of legal practice and head of finance and administration if you are a a licensed firm. So there's quite a lot of work involved in actually becoming accredited, but the Institute generally do now process it very, very quickly. They say it can take up to 6 months. It doesn't take that long. I don't know what your experience was. About 4 months. I think on average now it's about 2 or 3 months to actually get processed and into the system. But as I say, currently, when I last looked on Monday, there were 295 firms already up and doing this type of work. Now, clearly, there are costs involved, and it would be disingenuous not to mention the fact that there are fees. And as you can see, the fee will be dependent on the structure of your firm, whether you're going down authorised route or licensed route. And then it's dependent on number of principals within the firm. One thing I would say is that we're finding that firms are setting up to do probate work, but then setting up a separate firm or a separate limited company to do the work within, because it does cut down on the costs. Note also, not only have you got the fee to become accredited, you've also got to pay into the ICAEW compensation scheme, which is a scheme available to recipients of the service, and if they feel that they have lost as a result of action of a practitioner, they can claim against that compensation fund. So you will be paying into that as well. Now, again, one of the things we need to talk about is making sure that if you go down all the effort of sitting the assessment, becoming accredited, and then wanting to offer this service, you know, you've got to make sure that you promote it. And one of the things we are finding with a lot of firms who do the thing, they'll do the assessment, they'll get accredited, and then they just haven't got time to promote the service. And so therefore, they're not reaping the rewards that they potentially could do. There are a number of firms that we've come across who are very successful in this area, but it's because they have promoted this service. One of our firms, who were one of the first firms through the probate process, are now turning over hundreds of thousands of pounds in probate work. They are doing really well. And then smaller firms who are actively promoting this service do much better than, as I say, firms who don't really do anything with it and just wait for clients to die. And the thing is, your clients may die, but they've got family, they've got friends, they can make recommendations. So it's not literally just your clients that you would do this service for. So one of the things we would say is, as soon as you become accredited to do this work, issue a press release. And don't say, oh, look what I can do, aren't I marvellous? Say, we are the first accountant here in this town to offer this probate service. Do you know that accountants can do this now? Because a lot of people don't, and we need to make sure that everybody is aware. Within the practice, create a champion who can talk about the probate service to death and, you know, really promote that service. Obviously, place adverts and simple things. If you've got a local church and they have a church magazine, it probably would only cost you £15 for the year, but put an advert in the local church magazine, because, you know, the best will in the world, a lot of the congregation are elderly. So, you know, think about where we can place adverts, which wouldn't necessarily be the standard places where you might place adverts. And again, I don't know if any of you have got funeral directors as clients. You know, put advertisements in there, put flyers in there. You know, clearly people have to go there. Also, make sure your staff know that you can do this. You know, quite often we've done this generally with firms, not just on probate, but we've done surveys with clients asking their firm, you know, here's a list of services, which of these do we do? We had one firm and one person responded and said, you don't do accounts and tax. So I don't know what they thought they were doing, you know, who they were working for and what they were doing. But clearly the staff need to understand that you offer this service. Clearly your website will need to push it. And obviously we've got the standard things like leaflets and mailings. Think about seminars and events. We just need, and social media. Who's into social media? Is anybody really into? I'm hopeless, I have to say. I've just had a lesson on tweeting this morning, but you know, that's the sort of thing you want to be tweeting. That's the sort of thing you want to get out there. As soon as you become accredited, let people know. And again, it's not going to be immediate. You're not necessarily going to get immediate results, but we need to keep chipping away and making sure that people are aware that you can now provide this service. Okay, and that's it from me at the moment. Have we got any questions? Is anybody thinking about becoming accredited for probate work, or would like to become accredited for probate work? Now, if you're interested in talking more about the course and, you know, the process, come and see us on 870. You know, we'll be more than happy to talk you through what's required. Okay? Otherwise, thank you very much for your attention. Cheers.